What brought you to this event today?
Am I allowed to say that I'm hosting the event? I'm putting this on through my chapter, and I'm super excited to have you guys here.
I'm a part of the panel.
I'm one of the panelists.
I was a part of Turning Point for a good long while here at Colorado State. Stepped away because I decided to have other commitments, and I really came back to see what this was all about. Kind of a reverse Q&A is a really interesting prospect to me.
I'm part of TPUSA, so and also this kind of stuff is very interesting, so.
Not only support for other Turning Point chapters, but I also really enjoy listening to other people's opinions because that's the only way we can learn and open up conversation is if we understand which each side is coming from.
Just heard about it through Kevin LaRusso and his radio show, and so yeah, wanted to get out and see Peter. He was just on Glenn Beck's show a couple weeks ago, so good episode. Wanted to check him out.
My son told me about it and thought it might be something that was of interest, so I decided to come and check it out.
I'm part of the Turning Points for you in Northern Colorado, so kind of just heard about it and thought it'd be interesting to watch, and yeah.
What are you expecting?
Hopefully expecting some honest civil discourse. Normally we don't track that way with large events we hold, but since this one's more medium to small and we've invited people on the premise of that it's conversational and that the audience can be involved, I think we're leaning more towards like good faith conversations, which is not normally my hope, but I'm hoping for that tonight.
A conversation. There's probably going to be some disagreement on the panel. I'm expecting it. I'm kind of used to it. This isn't the first engagement I've had with my lovely fellows at TPUSA, but, I'm sure it'll go fine.
I'm expecting, obviously, discussion. Hopefully to be able to discuss some things in a coherent, cogent manner and maybe reach some common ground.
I'm not really sure what to expect. I know Kevin and Gabby are the Turning Point representatives. I don't know who the Young Democrat or the other side's representatives are, but I know there's going to definitely be, it's going to get a little heated at some points. I think there's going to be some good discussions had, but I think there's going to be some passionate and fiery discussions as well.
I don't really know what I'm expecting. I don't know what I'm going to learn. I don't know who's going to surprise me. Maybe somebody who I'm not interested in is going to surprise me. I don't know.
I'm expecting honest debates and hopefully people are truthful and they're kind to people. I don't want to see a lot of arguing. I want to see a lot of learning and understanding, but also educational as well.
I have no idea. I was not sure even how many non-college students there would be. I have no idea what to expect.
Good discourse, good debate, I suppose.
Slightly different question, and maybe you sort of answered that just a moment ago, but what are you hoping for?
Hoping that people can conduct themselves as adults. We're college students, but we are also adults, and I hope that people respond and act that way. I think this would be a really silly kind of event to try to protest for whatever reason.
To convincingly express my arguments in such a way that the room is persuaded at least a little bit.
I think I'm hoping for just to see some good dialogue take place. I don't think this is an opportunity we get to see a lot on campus. We see speakers from one side or the other come to campus and talk and state their views. We don't get to see a lot of back and forth. Here's the opportunity for that, and I'm really excited. And I hope that we get to see some productive dialogue out of these two different political views.
I'm hoping for entertainment, really. I'm hoping for an entertaining show. I want a lively show. I want people to express themselves, to go off, to have a good time. That's what I want.
I'm hoping to learn what other people's opinions are because I've only heard, what's kind of been taught to me as I've grown up or what I've seen on, social media, which we've seen what's been happening the past couple of days with that. And I'm excited to see what not only the Democrats but also an anarchist's ideas of society, how it's going to be run.
Do you feel free to express your opinion about controversial subjects in the classroom?
I feel free to, but I also know that there's consequences. I personally am very okay with taking those risks and accepting those consequences of losing friends, losing opportunities, losing connections, less networking for the professional world for my degree program, stuff like that. Less students are willing and able to do that, but I also understand why a lot of people I know really care about getting into medical school and are perfectly okay with not voicing their opinions in the classroom to get to where they want to go with their goals.
Definitely. I mean, I've had, some unpopular opinions. I'm a socialist, so not everyone's exactly on board with that. And I think that it's kind of important to, if you have a controversial opinion, I think it's important to voice it, because if you're wrong and you never voice that opinion publicly, you're never going to learn that you're wrong.
Yeah, I do. I don't think I've ever really experienced a situation where I've been silenced in that way.
I don't think so. I don't think I do. It's about 50-50 on my classes about whether I do or don't, but most of the time I do not. Because of my political views are more conservative, right-leaning, and I think that sometimes it feels like we are more pressured to withhold our views with regards to how we're going to proceed in the class with relations with our teachers, with our classmates, that kind of thing, to make sure that we get the grade that we want, make sure we are respected by our peers, make sure we're respected by the professor. And if they think differently of us because of our political views, typically that can end in less opportunities to do well in our education.
No, not at all.
Okay, why?
People get very uncomfortable with different opinions. That's like why, is because people's comfort level lowers when controversial topics are brought up, which is why, they're controversial, people get uncomfortable, but like that's why people don't feel free, is just because it's very emotionally triggering for a lot of people. People are emotionally primed on like a couple of issues, and so when the discussion gets very when there's more depth to the discussion, then it becomes uncomfortable for people. Like the surface level politics arguing, nobody gets uncomfortable, nobody freaks out, like nobody cares really, right? But it's when you really dig into a couple of different subjects that people get uncomfortable, that people feel unsafe, right, from other people's opinions.
I feel free to, but I feel that I will be reprimanded if I am. And if I do express those opinions, I don't fear that I will lose anything because I know I have the backing of a lot of students and a lot of people who support me. But sometimes it does seem daunting.
Definitely, do a little bit of self-censorship in the workplace and things like that. But I think I'm starting to kind of change that and be a little bit more open, just saying, what I feel and that sort of thing. So, yeah.
I guess, yeah, for the most part, I feel like I do. Depends maybe in the classroom, but and maybe the environments. But I guess I might feel kind of like not wanting to or kind of fearful to do so. But I feel like I could and wouldn't be, it wouldn't end up in a bad situation.
Which do you think weighs more on you consequence-wise? Is it more from students or more from teachers and faculty?
For me, it's more for students. I don't think the faculty knows as much about me politically as students do. I think my professors personally have a harder time punishing me because I'm in a dance major, so I'm not really being evaluated on my opinions or my papers or anything, which is great. I get punished from losing friends, kind of like the old school high school bullying of like hearing people like whispering about you as you walk past them in the hallways, which I really thought I had left behind getting to college. But that's happened. Hearing the gossip go around when I'm not at school from people that I am still friends with was happening. So that more of like the social kind of stuff.
I think it's probably 50-50 for me. I've relied heavily on my education for making sure I have good peer support and good professor support to be successful in the education that I've had over the past 3 years here at Colorado State. So I think it's a 50-50 thing for me.
It comes from both. Obviously, the peer pressure from people who are equal to you at your level, the students, is some pressure, but it's also people feel uncomfortable speaking their minds because for an example, they could have a professor who has this certain viewpoint. So every article you read in that class comes from that viewpoint. It's analyzed, every single event you talk about in that class is analyzed through that lens. And so it's like bringing up, well, maybe there's other points of view, there's other lenses through which we can view history or conflict or any of these other things. If the teacher's only expressing one viewpoint, then that doesn't lead you to like want to talk about other viewpoints, because it seems like the teacher has already made up their mind. So it's at what point, what's the point then even giving your opinion if if all the opinions you're seeing are very similar. So
Kind of both. Sometimes you have the people who are, just students, passerbys when you're tabling or anything like that, and they give you the side eye or they try to stop and debate you and tell you that instead of debating you, that you're just a bad person and then walk away instead of having a conversation. Sometimes it comes from like faculty or from professors on campus where they will grade you in a certain way, and you kind of have to learn and feel out what your professors are. I just try to stick to the truth, and that's all I can say.
All right, now allow me to introduce Peter Boghossian.
All right, welcome. I'm going to make this worth your time. We're having trouble speaking across divides and speaking to each other. And the first thing I want to do tonight is I want to go over certain tools. We have a number of questions. We're going to go over these. I'm going to show you a technique called the Delphi technique. I had no idea what anybody was going to write on the board. None. Everybody's going to get 2 votes. Police officers should have qualified immunity. Who wants to talk about that or see that model in the game? Okay. All voters should be required to present a valid photo ID. Okay. Sexual orientation should not be discussed in elementary school. Holy moly. Okay. Life begins at fertilization. I don't think we need to do another iteration. All voters should be required to present a valid photo ID. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, move. Okay, well, this is, okay, we can still do it. Okay, wow. Okay, why do you strongly agree?
Because having faith in our elections and making sure we have safe and secure elections is critical to our constitutional republic we live in. And if we can't verify who's voting, where they're voting, and how many times they're voting, it's basically useless. And if we don't trust the elections, we don't trust the people we elect. So having a photo ID is one of the simplest way to verify you are who you are and signing that ballot and voting on that ballot. And you need an ID to do everything else in this country. So why wouldn't we need an ID to do the most valuable thing there really is?
Can you make a better argument than that?
I couldn't make a better argument. He pretty much said what I was about to say.
What piece of evidence or reason or data point, what would it take for you to move to the agree line?
I don't really think there's anything.
I don't think there's really anything that could get me to move over.
Nothing.
Wow, that's so literally nothing it would take. Okay, so does anybody have an argument? Do you have one? Come on up.
I'm only saying that you need to maybe divest yourself a little bit from how meaningful and important the election is and become a little bit more ambivalent to it. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, did that sway you at all?
No.
Did that sway you at all?
No.
That sway you at all?
No, because he's given a personal opinion, not a fact of the question itself being asked.
Yeah, thanks. So in an idea, you can go down. Usually you'd play off people with each other and we'd have something fun. But so if people change their mind on these things, that's a really good thing because it shows that they're open to listening to reason and evidence. But if they don't change their mind, you've made progress because now you know why you believe what you believe and your belief has been tested. It's good to test your belief if you value true things. Sexual orientation should not be discussed in elementary school. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, move. Oh, shit. This is why you need intellectual diversity. Do you actually believe that? Okay, I take you for your word. Okay.
I believe that sexual orientation is a very deeply personal thing that should be developed by that person as and when they complete puberty, and that any attempt to undermine that by teaching somebody about that beforehand is a way to sexually groom them into whatever the teacher or instructor sees fit. And I also think it's suspicious that most of the instruction on sexual orientation to minors is happening by the LGBTQ community.
Okay.
And so I don't think they have authority. That should be within the home, within that person, within their family.
There could be an opportunity for some discussion somewhere based, K through 6, perhaps in 6th grade, perhaps with permission of the parents, perhaps in special groups, perhaps. I don't want to close the door on never.
Discussing sexual orientation is as simple as saying like, hey, some people are gay, some men like men, some women like women. I don't think that's going to tear apart any kids. And I actually think it does a great deal in enhancing equality if kids view certain kinds of relationships as acceptable. I think if they're socialized in a way that, they're not, I think it has some pretty negative outcomes. So I'd like them to just understand that it's okay.
And I just don't think that that's appropriate for that age level.
Yeah, I think a lot of kids already learn to a degree about sexual orientation. And mind you, we're not talking about sex. We're not talking about telling kids about that directly. We're talking about sexual orientation, which is a very different thing.
Orientation will inherently devolve into sexual topics.
Right. And what would be wrong about having that discussion? Even like the culmination of the act.
In terms of children, we must recognize that children have a certain innocence that almost all of us agree needs to be protected. It's wholly unnatural.
Okay. Wait, wholly unnatural. What if you could see evidence, the incidence of homosexuality throughout the animal kingdom?
I don't think that bonobos should be the model for sexual orientation.
Okay, I'm coming back to you. Nobody in this room wants to be wrong one more second than they have to be, right? Nobody. You don't want to be wrong. I don't want to be one. Okay. Obviously, there's a substantive disagreement, difference of opinion. So what do you know that they don't know that would cause them not to walk to there, but to walk one line?
If kids have the means to identify that something bad is happening to them, they're going to identify that to, a trusted adult.
What could you tell them to move them just to the agree?
There could possibly be some benefit somewhere, somehow.
Because I don't think predatory education involves sexual orientation. To talking about that, I think it's two different subjects.
I think once we start talking about sexual orientation being introduced into schools, it's far more than that, and that's usually used as a Trojan horse. For topics of sexual orientation that many people would not agree with, I would need evidence that education on sexual orientation does not alter the sexual orientation of children, and that sexual orientation of children is set in stone before children are approached about this in very early education.
And the reason you'd need that evidence, it must be because you think that there's something intrinsically bad about same-sex relations.
I wouldn't necessarily say that.
All right, good. Thank you, everybody. Good. Thanks. Police officers should have qualified immunity. We need to talk about what qualified immunity is.
So say that there is a situation with an armed robbery, a police officer that draws his gun and fires on the suspect, and it happens to hit another person. Well, because they were more trained in the situation, they have a qualified immunity. They were using their weapon in a situation they were trained to. So any kind of result of that is they are granted a level of immunity in the courts.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
3.5 seconds to get there.
Okay.
We should hold them accountable to a certain degree that, everybody else is held accountable in our community and our society.
And because people can be incredibly malevolent, there has to be an opposing force that can regulate that. Otherwise, psychopaths can take advantage of the population.
But I don't think that qualifies under qualified immunity.
I was just talking about if a police officer went crazy and just started like trying to hide murders that he did.
Well, then he would or she would definitely not have qualified immunity for that.
Certainly not. Certainly not.
So, anything to make you change to the right or the left? You think you can make someone change? Do you think you can make them move? What do you have to make someone move? That's the question. Qualified immunity only counts towards civil.
But what you're kind of confusing the two. There's civil law and criminal law, and you're mixing them, and you can't do that because there's remedies on both sides.
Now, this is why in the other events I pick the questions.
The DA may say, we're not pressing charges, but the family may say, okay, that's cool, the cop's doing his job, but we're going to sue the city and this officer.
Okay, so I didn't know that. I have no background in this.
The qualified immunity does not prevent the officer, doesn't prevent the city from getting sued. It prevents the officer from personally being sued.
Okay. All right, well,
so it takes the officer out of the equation, and the city will write the family a big check.
Yeah, that's extremely helpful, though. I had no idea about that.
So if these guys knew, I don't want to be rude, but if these folks knew better what qualified immunity was,
yeah, where would they stand?
They'd probably all be over in the far left.
Did he say anything that would cause you to move to the strongly agree?
If you're going to be charged criminally, and then you have to go in front of a jury for that manslaughter because it wasn't murder, and the jury deems that, yeah, you killed that person, you need to go to jail, that's just the court of law.
Okay, so are you willing to move to the strongly agree then?
Yeah.
All right, go ahead. All right, cool. All right, thanks, everybody. Good. Thanks. I appreciate it. You're free to go. All right, it was good. It was good. So if I say to you, why do you believe something? Often people talk themselves into their confidence to become more confident in things and their beliefs. But asking the question, what would it take you to move one line, or what would it take you to revise your beliefs, is incredibly powerful. Okay, so here's what we're going to do now. So we have people across the ideological divide. Can you say who you are, what groups you're with?
I'm Kevin. I am here with Turning Point USA. A lot of you already know me. Current vice president, former president.
Okay.
I am the ANCAP on the stage. Let's go.
All right, next.
I am Gabby. I am the current Turning Point president.
Okay.
My name's Zane. I'm not affiliated with any orgs, but I am a libertarian socialist, and I tend to talk a lot of politics with a lot of people on campus.
Hello, my name is Bryce. I also am not affiliated with any political groups on campus. I also self-identify as a libertarian socialist.
What is a libertarian socialist?
I advocate for worker ownership of the means of production and decommodification of as many things as is humanly possible.
I would also say it's about the maximization of both positive and negative liberty. When we're talking about positive liberty, it's talking about empowering people to actualize themselves and express their liberty.
So what is it about your friendship with him that enables you to have spirited disagreement? How do we replicate that?
So I think it's a product of education. Attempting to understand people while vocalizing your disagreements with them is a very important thing. Giving people the tools that they need in order to have those disagreements with one another, to approach those disagreements in good faith, and to have the best tools at their disposal for hashing out those disagreements is immensely important.
I couldn't agree more. And there must be something in your relationship with him that you have.
Kevin might be my favorite person to argue with.
Okay.
One of my goals was to be someone that people could look to and be like, okay, so he's demonstrating what it means to give a good faith argument. It's about actually appreciating that the person you're discussing with is not inherently evil, not inherently a bad person. You disagree, but just appreciating that most likely you're both motivated somehow, some way to do what you think is going to end up being best for everyone.
You're motivated by the good.
Yes.
You're motivated by the conception of the good life.
One of the main reasons why mostly conservative Christians feel afraid to voice their opinions on college campuses, Donald Trump.
Oh, I didn't see that coming. Tell me
CNN,
more.
MSNBC, all of these major far left news corporations spent 4 years telling the country that Donald Trump was a horrible, bigoted, racist, white supremacist. Therefore, if you support him, that makes you at least sympathetic, if not as bad as a horrible, racist, white supremacist.
My bet is that you guys don't believe that.
Mm-mm.
No, the two guys at the end.
Yeah, and I don't think these two do either. I think the reason that they're here is because they don't operate that way in their brain.
Okay, is that correct? You don't believe that she's a racist?
I don't know that she's a racist.
One of the reasons I found people absolutely refuse to have a conversation with me is because they're trying to make accusations stick of like bigot or homophobe or racist or Nazi, which is just insane. I mean, it's not even in the realm of reality. But I'm trying to ask the question of how do we remove that so we can start talking to each other again? So instead of looking at someone as a Nazi or a racist, like here's a person who's an American who has a view that I don't agree with, but that doesn't make them a vile pig. We couldn't get any left-leaning group to not even sponsor the event, but co-sponsor the event with a conservative group. That does not bode well for our future. Yeah. What kind of America do you want? What kind of country do you want to live in?
I want to live in a world where people can make decisions about their own futures.
Maximizing, both positive and negative liberties, like I was talking about earlier, is probably the ideal direction I'd like to see America go.
More tolerant might be kind of a simple way to put it.
I want the America that lives up to the values espoused in the Declaration of Independence, one that empowers the autonomy of the individual.
Thanks, everybody, for the night. Appreciate it. Thank you.
1, 2, 3. I love America.
All right, go talk to Nathan. Say hi.
First question, what did you think about this event?
I thought this was great. It's a great way to see the young kids learning about life in general.
What did you think about the event?
I thought it was very different. It wasn't exactly what I expected, to be honest. I thought it was more like psychological, like picking the brain of why we think certain ways, not so much like the political differences and the political ideologies itself, but really why we believe certain ways or why humans think the way they do. It was interesting, though. It was definitely interesting, just not what I expected.
I think it was a very productive event in terms of political dialogue. I think it was very effective to bring on 4 people that are well known around the campus. I've had discussions with all 4 of them, and I think it was a good way to bring political dialogue to the campus in a way that was productive instead of confrontational.
I thought it went really well. I'm really pleased with people's open-mindedness, that we didn't get too crazy, and that was my hope and my expectation. So yeah.
Okay, were you surprised by anything you heard tonight?
I was a little concerned that there was some gaps in their knowledge of certain things that I think they should have a little better understanding of before it becomes a topic that's so important.
Not necessarily, no. I think a lot of the points I've heard before, and I think it's kind of a product of our like hyper social mediaized world, in which most of the political arguments that we have, most of the talking points that we've learned are from social media. And so it's really a lot of political disagreements nowadays are a series of arguments we've heard from social media and then rebuttals to that. So I don't think I've heard anything organic here.
I don't know about surprised. I think I get a little lost in the weeds when we get into the really like psychological, theoretical, what about this, what if this happens, and like less concrete questions, but I still think it was like interesting.
Do you feel like you learned anything from this event?
I did. I'm a different generation than most of these people here. I mean, my daughter's age generation here. There's still a big divide, a big gap, just between us and them. And I think it's going to take a lot for everybody, like the one young lady said, to just kind of be a little more tolerant of each other, a little more accepting, and a little more listening. Before people just, like Kevin said, to just not have a preconceived idea ahead of time. You need to be open and need to listen and be able to step left or step right. Not a lot of stepping up there from these young kids. They seem to double down on a lot of their, I'm here and I'm not moving, even when faced with what I thought were some pretty good, options to at least move a step.
I definitely learned the difference of like civil and criminal law when it comes to qualified immunity. I learned that what a lot of the news and like the mainstream media in this country does not represent most Americans. It's a very far left or a far right opinion. And I kind of knew that, but it really like solidified this opinion of speaking with people and talking to people from different ideologies, that we all don't think each other are Nazis or racist, that we can disagree and still be civil with one another. So I really solidified that point I had.
Yeah, I feel like I learned something. I wish we had more people on the really far left, but as Peter was talking about, it's really hard to get people to come and have those conversations, and I think he was getting into why conservatives might be more open-minded or willing to have these conversations or come to events like this as opposed to people on the left more towards the end. But I think, as you guys have seen, it's trending that very far left people don't do these things, and why that is a conversation to have.
Yeah, do you see anything differently now than you did before? If so, what? How has your view changed?
No, for me, again, I'm an old guy, and I've always been kind of the middle of the road. I can't take sides for what I do for a living. I have to look at both sides, and I still have a real good, outlook on that, and I get to use the data and facts, and then some discretion still. So I think things are still the same for me. I think it's important for these kids to be able to be the ones that are learning how to adapt as they go on through life.
I do not feel any differently than I did before. I still think it's great to talk to these people, but I have not changed my political viewpoints.
Just with our familiarity of our friends on the left who came and spoke with us, that they're more libertarian on government than I had thought before, since we have talked with them in the past, especially Kevin. I anticipate that they're very socially left, but maybe more libertarian or centrist on government, and I think that distinction of what we're talking about is important.
Do you think you can talk in your classes about this event?
You can. There's going to be consequences, but you can.
Oh, would there be consequences? What kind of consequences would there be?
Not so much explicit consequences, but there can be implicit, especially as an outspoken conservative on college campuses, especially a campus that is more left-leaning, such as Colorado State University. You are going to be shunned by classmates, by professors. You are going to be graded different. Not every teacher, but there are certain cases where you could be graded harsher based on how you write, how you speak. So in the way society has put the scarlet letter on conservatives as being these terrible people, and I think the young lady up front who mentioned that Donald Trump really embodied this, where if you support him, you support these, is really followed into the college campuses, and they believe that. So you are free to say what you want, but there are going to be a little reprimandations from it.
So like social kind of like. Can you
give an example? So if you go to school here and you're on the football team, and we know NFL and NCAA have done, really ran with like the BLM and the Black Lives Matter thing. They were putting it on their jerseys, on the back of their helmets. If you decided, I don't want to do that, I don't believe in that, you are going to be shunned by your team and your teammates on the campus.
I think that in terms of fearing physical violence, I don't feel in danger in any way. I don't necessarily feel like people will come and attack me, although there is an immense social cost. So there are a lot of classes that I take that are relatively political, and I usually hold my tongue, especially with the entire class, because I don't necessarily want to be like socially targeted or shunned for the rest of the semester.
How can we improve?
Yeah, I talked to Peter about this, but just really straightforward, concrete statements or questions. Like on the plaza when we got to, CCPD should be abolished. That's a really concrete thing people can understand and therefore have a more solid opinion on, and it's easier for them to justify and explain their positions.
And do you have any constructive criticism for Pete specifically?
My constructive criticism would be go more to, I think he overcomplicated things in his question. Keep it simpler. You'll appeal to a bigger audience that way. I think he was getting too psychological. Just keep it very basic, and I think you'll appeal to a lot more people.
Great. Well, awesome. Thank you so much for that feedback, and really appreciate it.
Thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.